The German heavy tanks were unstoppable killing machines until they met a tiny, fast American tank that wasn't supposed to exist. At 7:42 a.m. on September 19th, 1944, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper stood exposed in the hatch of his M18 Hellcat tank destroyer, positioned on Hill 246 near Ericourt, France. A dense, white fog choked the valley below, cutting visibility to scarcely 30 feet. Leiper, just 26, had been leading this tank destroyer platoon for 3 months, yet he'd never once faced a Panther. Now, a colossal engagement was about to begin. The German 113th Panzer Brigade had unleashed 45 mighty Panther tanks and 36 Panzer Mark IVs, aiming straight for the 4th Armored Division's headquarters. Leiper commanded only 4 M18 Hellcats. These machines were the subject of ridicule among U.S. crews, often dismissed as flimsy toys since their arrival 2 months earlier. The M18 weighed only 17 tons, whereas the Panther creeping toward them through the mist checked in at a monstrous 45 tons. The Hellcat had a scant half-inch, 13 millimeters, of frontal plating, sufficient only to stop small arms fire. The Panther, conversely, boasted 80 millimeters of hardened, sloped steel on its front glacis. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had taken delivery of the very first M18S back in May 1944 while training in England. Captain Thomas Evans of Company C vividly recalled the visible apprehension of his men as they inspected the new vehicles. The armor protection was less than that of the M8 Greyhound armor car. Worse still, the turret was completely open to the sky. A single, accurately placed mortar round could wipe out the entire crew immediately. The preceding 3 days of fighting near Ericourt had cost the 4th Armored Division 14 Sherman medium tanks and 7 Stuart light tanks. The toll was high: 25 dead, 88 injured. Most of these casualties resulted from German 75mm and 88mm cannons slicing through their frontal armor at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. What hope did the M18 have? Its main weapon, the 76mm gun, was known to be incapable of penetrating the Panther's frontal armor, not at 1,000 yards, not even up close. Army tests had already confirmed this devastating truth. To successfully destroy a Panther, an M18 crew had only 2 options: strike the thin metal around the lower gun mantlet and pray the shell ricocheted downward into the 16mm roof plate above the driver, or execute a flank maneuver and hit the enemy's far thinner side armor. Sherman crews derided the M18 as a death trap. Crews transitioning from the older, slower M10 battalions dubbed it a suicide vehicle. Buick designed the M18 to be the fastest armored track vehicle of the war, capable of hitting 55 miles per hour on paved roads. But was this speed really useful if the crew was killed before they could use it defensively? General Bruce's radical tank destroyer doctrine required M18 units to find and exploit weaknesses in enemy formations, move quickly to advantageous spots, deliver precise fire, and immediately pull back before the enemy could retaliate. It was a pure shoot and scoot philosophy. This theory sounded brilliant in high-level staff discussions at Fort Hood, Texas. However, facing seasoned Panther crews who had survived 2 years of brutal conflict on the Eastern Front, the plan seemed like a recipe for organized self-destruction. The German 5th Panzer Army launched its counteroffensive as dawn broke on September 19th. Hitler himself had issued the explicit command: halt Patton's 3rd Army, recapture Nancy, and drive the Americans back across the Moselle River. The 111th and 113th Panzer Brigades were equipped with brand new Panther tanks straight from the factory floor. While the crews were often young and green, the Panther itself remained the most feared armored vehicle in the European theater. If you want to witness how Leiper's 4 fast, fragile tank destroyers managed to halt an entire Panzer Brigade, smash that like button now. Liking and subscribing helps us share more vital stories from the brave men who actually fought in this conflict. Please subscribe to War After Dark if you haven't yet. Now, back to Lieutenant Leiper. By 7:45 that fateful morning, Leiper's 4M18S reached the summit of Hill 246. Captain William Dwight, a liaison officer from the 37th Tank Battalion, had spotted the German column only 15 minutes earlier while scouting in his Jeep. He immediately raced back to Colonel Bruce Clark at Combat Command, A's headquarters. Clark's order was decisive and immediate. Take a platoon of tank destroyers, get to Hill 246, and stop them. Leiper's crews had just dismounted to survey the area when the first Panther ghosted out of the thick fog at the bottom of the hill. The massive German tank was less than 100 yards away. Its long-barreled 75mm gun swept slowly left and right, desperately searching for targets invisible through the morning mist. Sergeant Stacy commanded the lead M18. He had perhaps 15 agonizing seconds to make a decision that would either prove the tank destroyer doctrine viable or confirm the M18 was exactly what its critics claimed, a worthless machine guaranteed to get good men killed without accomplishing anything. Stacy's gunner rotated the turret. The electric motor whirred almost silently. The M18's turret could complete a full 360-degree rotation in less than 20 seconds. The Panther's turret, by contrast, had to be turned by hand, requiring almost a minute for the full rotation. This speed difference was Sergeant Stacy's only tangible advantage. The gunner locked onto the target. The Panther's massive hull filled the entire sight picture. Range, 75 yards. The German crew still hadn't detected them. The fog was simply too thick. Stacy gave the command to fire at 7:46 in 15 seconds. The 76mm cannon roared. The shell crossed the 75 yards in a mere fraction of a second. It slammed into the Panther's right track assembly. The track instantly shattered. The Panther shuddered to a halt, smoke already beginning to rise from the damaged suspension. The German crew started abandoning ship instantly. They knew another round was seconds away. Stacy's loader rammed a second round into the breech. 7 seconds later, the gunner fired again. This shot penetrated the Panther's thinner side armor, which was exposed when the tank halted. The German machine erupted in intense flames. The German commander and gunner managed to escape, but the driver and radio operator did not. 30 seconds later, a second Panther emerged from the mist at the base of the hill. It was in the identical position, only 80 yards away. The German crew had certainly heard the preceding engagement and were now scanning frantically for targets, but the fog reduced visibility to virtually zero. The M18's extremely low profile also made it incredibly difficult to spot from below. Stacy's gunner fired without waiting for specific orders. Tactics and training defeat heavy armor. The shell struck the second Panther's thick mantlet. The ricochet worked precisely as Army Ordnance specialists had hoped. The round deflected downward, slicing through the thin armor directly above the driver's compartment. The Panther stopped dead. No fire, no smoke, just a silent, dead tank with a dead crew inside. Leiper's other 3 M18s had spread out across the hilltop, maintaining 50-yard gaps between positions. This was textbook tank destroyer doctrine. Never cluster, never give the enemy a single, valuable target. Sergeant Henry Hartman commanded the M18 on the far left flank. He had been a tank destroyer crewman since the battalion formed in April 1941. 3 years of preparation, 2 months of combat. The mist still concealed everything past 100 feet. German tanks continued to appear at the foot of Hill 246 like spectral figures materializing from the white vapor. The 113th Panzer Brigade was advancing strictly in a column, tank following tank. They couldn't see Leiper's platoon. They couldn't even see the American positions at Ericourt. They were driving blind into an ambush they never knew existed. The 3rd Panther appeared at 7:47. Hartman's gunner acquired the target before it reached the slope's bottom. Range, 90 yards. A single shot found the side armor. The Panther immediately caught fire and burned. The 4th Panther, 7:48. Leiper's own M18 engaged from the central position. 2 shots required. The first shot flew high. The second round slammed through the turret ring. The Panther's turret instantly jammed. The crew bailed out. 4 men sprinting blindly into the fog, vanishing within seconds. The 5th Panther at 7:49. This was Stacy's second confirmed destruction. This time, the crew saw them. The German gunner had spotted the muzzle flash from the earlier rounds and began slowly traversing his long gun towards Stacy's location. It was agonizingly slow. The hand-crank traverse felt like an eternity for the German gunner, who must have known he was about to perish. Stacy's gunner fired first. The shell connected with the Panther's gun mantlet. Clean penetration. The German tank halted. No movement. No crew evacuation. Total crew loss. 5 German Panthers annihilated in 4 stunning minutes. The bizarre, risky theory was working flawlessly. The M18's legendary speed was irrelevant in this specific fight. Its electrically powered turret traverse, however, meant everything. That, and the relentless fog, which completely nullified the Panther's superior gun range and forced every engagement to occur within 100 yards, the exact range where the Hellcat's 76mm gun could finally score a kill. Then, the 6th Panther emerged at 750. This crew had clearly learned from the preceding rapid losses. The German tank commander expertly positioned his Panther hull down behind a minor rise, exposing only the turret. He now had a clear, direct line of fire onto Stacy's M18. The Panther fired first. The 75mm shell struck Stacy's M18 on the right side of the turret. The explosion killed the loader instantly. Shrapnel grievously wounded both the gunner and the commander. The driver and assistant driver were miraculously unharmed, but the M18's right track was heavily damaged. The vehicle could still move, but just barely. Stacy immediately ordered a retreat. The driver expertly nursed the damaged Hellcat down the reverse slope of Hill 246 toward Aircourt, smoke billowing behind them. German shells landed nearby, but failed to connect. They would reach the command post, but Leiper's platoon was now reduced to 3 M18s instead of 4, and the German advance showed no signs of slowing down. Leiper now commanded only 3 operational M18 tank destroyers against an enemy force that still outnumbered him roughly 15-1. The German 113th Panzer Brigade had started the day with 45 Panthers and 36 Panzermark IVs. They had lost 5 tanks in 4 minutes. That still left 76 German armored units advancing through the low-lying fog. How much longer could 3 lightly armored vehicles possibly hold this position against such overwhelming might? The 7th Panther materialized at 7:52. Hartmann's crew engaged from the left flank. A single shot. The round struck the Panther's engine deck. Penetration through the thinner rear armor. The tank instantly caught fire. Flames shot 30 feet into the morning air. The crew began evacuating. 3 men made it out alive. 2 did not. The 8th Panther, 7:54. Leiper's M18 engaged from the central position. This tank required 3 shots. The first round hit the track. The second round missed completely. The third round penetrated the turret. The Panther stopped moving. The crew successfully evacuated. All 5 men disappeared quickly into the fog. The German column had finally grasped that they were under a coordinated attack. Radio traffic among Panther commanders spiked dramatically. Orders were yelled. Engines roared. Tanks attempted to maneuver, but the pervasive fog rendered coordinated movement impossible. The German crews couldn't see their own comrades. They couldn't see the American positions. They could only see bright muzzle flashes erupting from somewhere higher up in the dense white mist. The 9th Panther, 7:56. This was Hartmann's 3rd kill. The German tank attempted to swing wide left around the base of Hill 246. The maneuver fatefully exposed the Panther's side armor. Hartmann's gunner fired 1 round. Clean penetration through the sponson. The shell detonated inside the ammunition storage rack. The Panther exploded violently. The turret lifted 3 feet off the hull. There were no survivors. The 10th Panther, 7:58. The M18 on Leiper's right flank, commanded by Sergeant Miller, engaged. They were an extremely experienced crew, having trained together since Camp Ibis, California, in 1943. The gunner's initial shot missed. The Panther was actively reversing, attempting to retreat from the engagement zone. The German commander had logically concluded that flight was preferable to certain incineration. Miller's gunner fired again. The shell struck the Panther's thick mantlet. Another successful deflection shot. The round ricocheted downwards through the upper glacis plate. The Panther instantly halted. Smoke poured from the driver's compartment. No fire. The crew evacuated. 4 men were visible running away, but the driver's hatch never opened. At 8:02 a.m., the German 113th Panzer Brigade attempted a coordinated 6-tank assault. 6 Panthers simultaneously advanced toward Hill 246. They were still driving completely blind. The fog hadn't lifted. However, German doctrine strongly prioritized aggressive action. Close with the enemy, use superior armor. That approach worked effectively against Soviet T-34s on the Eastern Front, but it failed utterly against American tank destroyers who had no intention of engaging in a fair fight. Leiper's 3 remaining M-18s opened fire simultaneously. Hartmann engaged the leftmost Panther. Leiper targeted the center tank. Miller took the rightmost threat. 3 rapid shots, 3 instant hits. 3 Panthers stopped dead in less than 10 seconds. The remaining 3 German tanks desperately tried to reverse, but one threw a track, and its crew instantly abandoned it. The final 2 vanished back into the enveloping fog. 11th Panther destroyed, 12th, 13th, all within 60 seconds. This ambush was quickly turning into a massacre, but the M-18 crews understood their improbable luck couldn't last forever. At 8:07 a.m., a Panther finally located Miller's position. The German tank had approached from a completely unexpected angle, climbing uphill from the northeast. It had somehow navigated a high ridge line that American topographical maps had marked as impassable for heavy tracked vehicles. The Panther commander showed excellent fieldcraft. The German fired first. Range, 40 yards. The 75mm shell struck Miller's M18 directly on the notoriously thin frontal armor. 13mm of steel provided zero protection. The round penetrated the crew compartment violently. Miller died instantly. His gunner also died instantly. The loader was severely wounded but survived. The driver and assistant driver scrambled out through their forward hatches. 2 M18s remained, Leiper and Hartmann. 13 German Panthers had been destroyed, but the cost to the Americans was rising sharply. Miller, 31 years old, married with 2 children back in Pennsylvania, would have his family receive the terrible telegram in 3 weeks. The thick fog started to dissipate around 8:15 a.m. Visibility improved rapidly, from 30 feet to 100 feet, then stretching to 200 feet. The advantage shifted instantly. Panthers could now spot targets at ranges where their superior armor and huge gun firepower truly mattered. M18s required extremely close range, total surprise, and the shielding power of the fog. The 14th Panther appeared at 8:20 a.m. Hartmann engaged immediately. The range was 150 yards, too distant for a guaranteed kill, but Hartmann's gunner was renowned as the best in Company C, having achieved an expert score on every gunnery qualification since joining the battalion. The shell struck the Panther's turret ring. The turret jammed solid. Crew evacuated. At 8:23 a.m., a Panther engaged Leiper's M18 from 300 yards away. The German shell missed, but only narrowly. It slammed into the ground 10 feet in front of Leiper's position. Dirt and rock shards exploded upward, peppering the M18's thin skin. No penetration, but the signal was crystal clear. Remain stationary here, and you will surely die. Leiper instantly ordered his driver to reposition. The M18 bagged down the reverse slope, drove 50 yards to the left, and returned to the crest in a completely new firing position. This entire movement took less than 40 seconds. This unmatched mobility was the entire reason the M18 existed. Shoot and scoot. Never linger. Never offer the enemy a static target. The 15th Panther appeared at 8:28 a.m. Hartmann's crew spotted it approaching carefully from the northwest. Range, 200 yards. The fog was almost completely gone. Visibility had expanded to 300 yards in most directions. The German tank moved with extreme caution, taking a hull-down position behind a low stone wall. Only the turret and its gun were visible. Hartmann's gunner acquired the target. The Panther's commander was systematically scanning the ridge with binoculars, hunting for the American positions that had annihilated 14 tanks in 43 minutes. The German crew exhibited superb discipline. They weren't panicking. They weren't needlessly exposing themselves. Hartmann's initial shot struck the stone wall directly in front of the Panther. The shell exploded, showering the German tank with stone fragments. No damage, but the Panther commander now knew exactly where Hartmann's M18 was positioned. The German gun began its slow traverse. The hand crank limited rotation speed to perhaps 6 degrees per second. Hartmann's loader shoved another round into the breech, 6 seconds. The gunner adjusted his aim. 2 degrees right, 1 degree down. He fired just before the Panther's gun could complete its traverse. The shell impacted the Panther's mantlet, a textbook-perfect deflection shot. The round ricocheted downward through the thin, upper glassy plate. The Panther stopped moving. The turret stopped traversing. No fire, no explosion, just a silent, dead tank and its dead crew. 15 German Panthers destroyed. 3 M18 Hellcats lost, 2 crews killed, 1 crew wounded and evacuated. The engagement had lasted 46 intense minutes. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper and Sergeant Henry Hartman remained on Hill 246 with their 2 operational tank destroyers. At 8:35 a.m., Colonel Clark radioed Leiper to maintain his position. Reinforcements were finally advancing. Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was deploying additional M18s to the ridgeline. The German assault had completely stalled. The 113th Panzer Brigade had lost all momentum. Panthers were seen withdrawing toward Bazenges-la-Petite. The morning attack had failed decisively. The fog lifted entirely by 9 a.m. Visibility stretched for over 1,000 yards. The battlefield's grim reality was revealed. 15 ruined Panthers lay scattered across the approach to Hill 246. Columns of thick black smoke rose from the burning hulls. German bodies were visible near several tanks. Crews who had evacuated but failed to run far enough before the stored ammunition cooked off and exploded. Captain Thomas Evans arrived at Leiper's position at 9:15 a.m. Evans, 28 years old, commanded Company C. He surveyed the destroyed Panthers through his binoculars, counting them carefully twice. 15 confirmed kills achieved by only 4 M18s. The resulting kill ratio was far better than anyone at Fort Hood had ever dared to predict. Evans asked Hartman how many enemy vehicles his crew had accounted for. Hartman reported 6 confirmed destructions. Evans validated the claims against the observed wreckage positions. 6 Panthers in Hartman's sector, all destroyed by flank hits or textbook deflection shots through the mantlet. This was master-level gunnery. Hartman's gunner would later receive a Bronze Star for his actions that day. Leiper reported 2 confirmed kills. His gunner claimed 3, but one could not be independently verified. The destroyed Panther might have been hit by artillery. Combat is inherently chaotic. Perfect attribution is frequently impossible. Leiper accepted 2 confirmed kills for his crew. The German 113th Panzer Brigade regrouped south of Ericourt. They had begun the morning with 81 operational tanks. They now possessed 66. 15 Panthers wiped out in under an hour. The brigade commander reported back to 5th Panzer Army headquarters that American tank destroyers were dramatically more effective than prior intelligence reports had suggested. He strongly recommended avoiding close-quarters engagements with M18 units unless German forces held massive numerical superiority and, critically, good visibility. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had definitively proven something vital that morning. The M18 Hellcat was not a suicide machine. It was not a death trap. It was precisely what General Bruce had envisioned: a high-speed, lethal platform designed to exploit enemy weaknesses and withdraw before the enemy could react effectively. But September 19th was only the prologue. The Battle of Ericourt would rage for 10 more days. The German 5th Panzer Army committed additional panzer brigades, including the feared 111th Panzer Brigade. More Panthers, more desperate attacks. The 704th would confront them all. Between September 19th and September 29th, Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion engaged German armor in 17 distinct actions. They would ultimately destroy 39 Panthers and Panzermark IVs. They would lose 4 M18s destroyed and 3 damaged. The kill-to-loss ratio remained extraordinary throughout the entire fight. American tankers stopped mocking the M18 as pathetic. Tank destroyer crews from M10 Battalion ceased calling it a suicide machine. Word rapidly spread through Patton's Third Army. The Hellcat worked. The doctrine worked. Speed and superior maneuverability could indeed defeat heavy armor, provided the crews used the right tactics. Leiper returned to Company C's command post that afternoon. He manually wrote his after-action report, 23 detailed pages. Every engagement was timed, every shell documented, range estimates recorded, penetration locations noted, and crew performance assessed. This critical report reached 3rd Army headquarters within 48 hours. Staff officers studied it meticulously. Tank destroyer doctrine was immediately refined based on Leiper's combat observations. But Leiper would not remain a lieutenant for long. By March 1945, he would be promoted to first lieutenant. He would cross the Rhine River on March 24th, fight through the Harz Mountains in April, and survive the entirety of the war. He returned home to a nation largely unaware of his staggering achievements on a foggy French hillside in September 1944. The M18 Hellcat had entered combat service in July 1944, just 3 months before the pivotal engagement on Hill 246. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion received the first production vehicles in May while still training in England. They were effectively the guinea pig battalion. Test the new concept in live combat, report all issues, and recommend necessary modifications. The M18 weighed 17,700 pounds when combat loaded. Its Continental or 975C1 radial engine generated 400 horsepower. This gave the Hellcat a spectacular power-to-weight ratio of 22 horsepower per ton. For context, the Sherman medium tank managed 13 horsepower per ton. The Panther managed only 13.8. The huge difference was entirely speed. The M18 could achieve 55 miles per hour on paved surfaces. Real-world combat conditions reduced that to perhaps 40 miles per hour on good ground, dropping to 20 miles per hour on rough terrain. Yet, even at reduced speeds, the M18 was faster than any other tracked armored vehicle operating during the war. Soviet T-34s topped out at 34 miles per hour maximum. German Panthers reached 29 miles per hour. American Shermans peaked at 25 miles per hour. Speed was, by necessity, the M18's primary defense mechanism. Why? Because the armor couldn't stop anything significant. 13 millimeters on the front hull, barely half an inch of steel. The turret armor was marginally better at 25 millimeters, but that was still only 1 inch thick. For comparison, the M8 Greyhound armored car possessed 19 millimeters of frontal armor. The Hellcat was less protected than a scout vehicle. The Panther that Hartmann destroyed at 828 weighed 99,000 pounds, 45 metric tons. Its frontal glacis plate was 80 millimeters thick and sloped at 55 degrees. The effective thickness against a direct, perpendicular shot was approximately 140 millimeters. The M18's standard 76 millimeters gun could not penetrate that formidable armor at any range using conventional ammunition. The Army had developed a high-velocity armor-piercing round designated T4 HVAP. These rounds utilized a rare tungsten carbide core wrapped in aluminum. Muzzle velocity increased dramatically from 2,600 feet per second to 3,400 feet per second. The HVAP round could theoretically pierce the Panther's mantlet at 1,000 yards, but HVAP ammunition remained critically scarce throughout late 1944. Tungsten carbide was a rare material, and production was extremely limited. Most tank destroyer battalions received perhaps 2 HVAP rounds per vehicle per month. Crews hoarded them for absolute desperation. The entire engagement on Hill 246 was fought using only standard M62 armor-piercing rounds. The tactical solution was brutally simple. Never engage Panthers head-on. Never engage at long range. Use the M18 speed to achieve a firing position on the enemy's flank or rear. Utilize the fog. Utilize the terrain. Use absolutely anything except the frontal armor, because the M18 possessed none worth mentioning. General Andrew Bruce conceptualized the tank destroyer doctrine back in 1941, before Pearl Harbor, before America entered the global conflict. Bruce predicted that future wars would involve mass tank attacks, blitzkrieg tactics designed to punch armored columns through defensive lines. The solution, he argued, wasn't thicker tanks. The solution was fast, highly mobile tank destroyers capable of responding instantly to enemy breakthrough attempts. Bruce demanded vehicles that could exceed 60 miles per hour. He wanted cannons powerful enough to destroy any tank at 1,000 yards. He wanted crews trained to think aggressively, locate the enemy, strike the enemy hard, withdraw rapidly before the enemy could respond. Never stand still. Never fight fairly. Never trade shots with heavy armor from static positions. The M18 Hellcat was Bruce's grand vision made reality. 17 tons, 55 miles per hour, 76 millimeters main gun, open top turret granting superb visibility for the crew, an electro-turret traverse, enabling a full 360-degree rotation in 20 seconds. The machine met every one of Bruce's specifications, save for one critical flaw. The main gun was underpowered. The 76mm M1 gun was the same weapon mounted on later Sherman variants. It fired identical ammunition and had the same penetration statistics. Against Panzer Mark IVs, the gun was adequate. Against Panthers and Tigers, the weapon was marginal at best. Against the frontal armor of a Panther, the gun was essentially useless unless the crew could execute a perfect deflection shot through the mantlet area. But Leiper's platoon had just proven that perfect deflection shots were absolutely possible. Hartmann had scored 3 deflection kills on September 19th alone. His gunner intuitively grasped the geometry involved. He understood precisely where the shell would ricochet. Aim for the mantlet. Let physics complete the destruction. The round deflects downward through the thin, upper glassy plate. The ricochet penetrates the crew compartment. The Panther dies instantly. This counterintuitive technique swiftly became standard operating doctrine for M18 crews across the entire European theater. Shoot for the mantlet. Do not waste precious ammunition on the heavily protected glassy plate. Do not attempt frontal penetration. Aim for known weak spots. Exploit the geometry. Trust the ricochet effect. The inevitable German response to the Hellcat was predictable. Avoid close-range engagements. Maintain maximum distance. Use the inherent advantage of superior gun range. The Panther's 75mm KWK 42L/70 cannon could kill an M18 at 2,000 yards. The M18 could only kill a Panther at ranges under 300 yards with standard ammunition. The tactical equation favored the Germans at range, but it overwhelmingly favored the Americans at close range and poor visibility. September 19th provided ideal conditions for the American tank destroyer doctrine. Dense fog, close proximity, total surprise, and severely limited visibility that canceled out all German armor advantages. But those perfect conditions would rarely be repeated. The Battle of Ericourt dragged on for 10 grueling days, following Leiper's morning engagement. The German 5th Panzer Army committed additional forces. The 111th Panzer Brigade joined the attack on September 22nd. Fresh Panthers, green crews, but the same critical orders. Stop Patton. Recapture Nancy. Company C of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion participated in every major clash. September 20th, 21st, 22nd. The M18s were ubiquitous, defending Juvillies, shielding the approach to Lizy, and supporting the 37th Tank Battalion near Bazenges-la-Petite. The Hellcats operated exactly as General Bruce had envisioned. Lightning-fast response, aggressive positioning, shoot and scoot. On September 22nd, elements of the German 11th Panzer Division attacked toward Juvillies at 9:15 a.m. Heavy fog descended again. Visibility dropped to 100 feet. Hellcats from Company B of the 704th engaged from meticulously concealed positions. 3 Panthers were destroyed before the German column quickly withdrew. No American losses. The fog lifted that afternoon. German artillery began ranging on known American positions. Panthers advanced with better coordination than they had displayed on September 19th. The German commanders had learned their lesson. They used flanking infantry screens. They maintained wider spacing between tanks. They avoided predictable approach routes. The 704th immediately adapted. M18 crews started utilizing buildings for cover. They would position themselves behind thick stone farmhouses, exposing only the gun barrel. Fire one shot, reverse out instantly, and reposition to a completely different location before German return fire could arrive. This maneuver worked because the M18 could accelerate faster than any German tank could traverse its turret manually. On September 23rd, the weather cleared completely. Visibility expanded to over 2,000 yards across the open fields around Ericourt. Panthers now held the decisive advantage. They could engage the M18s at ranges where the Hellcat's gun was completely useless. Several M-18s were lost that day. Crews quickly internalized the new rules. Never expose yourself in open terrain. Never engage at long distance. Wait patiently for the enemy to close the distance or find cover approaches. Captain Evans lost his second M-18 on September 24th to German artillery fire. The shell landed directly inside the open turret. 3 crewmen died instantly. The loader survived but suffered the loss of both legs. He was evacuated to England within 12 hours. Though he would never walk again, he survived the war, returning home to Indiana in April 1945. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion destroyed its 25th Panther on September 25th, the 30th on September 27th, and the 39th and final Panther on September 29th. By the end of the battle, Company C alone had claimed 22 confirmed kills. Companies A and B accounted for the remaining 17. The German 5th Panzer Army retreated on September 30th. The 113th Panzer Brigade had been reduced from 81 operational tanks to 47. The 111th Panzer Brigade lost 19 Panthers and 12 Panzermark IVs. The German attack on Nancy had utterly failed. Patton's Third Army held the line. The push toward Germany continued. American losses were significant but manageable. The 4th Armored Division lost 14 Sherman medium tanks destroyed, 7 Stuart light tanks destroyed, and 21 additional Shermans damaged but salvageable. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion lost 4 M-18s destroyed, 3 damaged, 21 men killed, and 37 wounded. The kill ratio heavily favored the Americans. 39 German tanks destroyed for 4 M-18s lost. That ratio was almost 10-1. No other American armored unit in the European theater achieved comparable numbers. The M18 Hellcat had definitively proven its value. Following Ericourt, the demand for M18 battalions exploded. Tank destroyer battalions equipped with the older M10 vehicles immediately requested conversion to the faster M18. General Omar Bradley, who had previously resisted deploying Hellcats with the First Army, reversed his stance completely. He now wanted M18 battalions attached to every armored division under his command. But production was limited. Buick manufactured 2,507 minutes and 18 seconds between July 1943 and October 1944. Then, production abruptly ceased. The Army had initially planned to produce 8,986 minutes and 18 seconds, but that plan was canceled. Resources were diverted to the M36 tank destroyer, which mounted a powerful 90mm gun. The 90mm gun could penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at 1,000 yards. The M36 weighed 31 tons, slower than the M18, less maneuverable, but the devastating firepower made the difference. Army planners concluded that killing power was ultimately more important than pure speed. They were likely correct, but the men who fought at Ericourt would forever argue that the M18 was the finest tank destroyer ever created. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper continued, leading his platoon through October and November. Company C fought throughout the Lorraine campaign. They supported the 4th Armored Division's advance toward the German border, engaging German armor near Düz, near Fenetran, near Saarburg. The M18s continued their deadly work against Panthers. The 704th continued proving that speed and aggressive tactics could overcome heavy armor. Then came December, the Ardennes. The Germans launched their final major offensive on the Western Front. Hitler committed his last reserves, Panthers, Tigers, and the colossal Tiger IIs. The Battle of the Bulge would test every American unit, including the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, including the M18 Hellcat, and including Edwin Leiper. The German offensive began on December 16, 1944. 3 German armies attacked through the Ardennes forest, 28 divisions, 200,000 men, and 1,400 tanks and assault guns. Hitler's objective was simple: split the Allied armies, capture Antwerp, and force a quick negotiated peace in the West. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was positioned near Saarburg when the news arrived. Orders came through at 0200 on December 17th. Immediate displacement north, maximum speed. Third Army was rapidly redirecting forces to block the German breakthrough. The 704th would redeploy to Bastogne. Company C traveled 200 miles in 36 hours. The M18s averaged nearly 40 miles per hour on the approach march. Their blistering speed was finally being utilized as intended, racing to plug a critical hole in American lines, arriving before the Germans could anticipate reinforcements. General Bruce's doctrine was validated once more, fast tank destroyers responding rapidly to enemy breakthrough. The 704th reached Bastogne on December 19th. The town was already surrounded. The 101st Airborne Division held the perimeter. German forces were tightening the noose. Panthers and Tigers from multiple panzer divisions pressed the American defenders from every direction. Leiper's platoon was attached to Combat Command B of the 10th Armored Division. They established defensive positions on the northern approach to Bastogne. German armor constantly probed the lines, small attacks, testing American strength, looking for weak points. The M18s engaged only when German tanks came within effective range. On December 22nd, German Panthers assaulted Leiper's sector in force. 12 tanks advanced across open, snow-covered ground. The range started at 1,000 yards, too far for effective engagement. The M18 crews waited patiently. Let them close. The Panthers approached 600 yards. Still too far. 500 yards. 400. At 300 yards, Leiper's platoon opened fire. 4 M18s unleashed 12 shots in the first 30 seconds. 3 Panthers were instantly destroyed. 2 more were damaged and immobilized. The remaining 7 Panthers quickly retreated. They had learned at Ericourt that closing distance with M18s was lethal. Apparently, they had not learned enough. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion fought at Bastogne for 37 brutal days, from December 19th through January 25th. During that period, they destroyed 41 German tanks, including Panthers, Tigers, and Panzermark IVs. The M18 crews developed new winter combat tactics, using deep snow drifts for concealment, positioning behind frozen hedgerows. Everything was blanketed in white. Visibility was excellent during clear weather, but utterly non-existent during heavy snowstorms. The battalion received a Distinguished Unit Citation for their exemplary actions at Bastogne, recognizing their exceptional performance against numerically superior forces. 21 men from the 704th received individual decorations: Silver Stars, Bronze Stars, Purple Hearts. Sergeant Henry Hartman earned his second Bronze Star for obliterating 4 Tigers in a single engagement on January 8th. Leiper was promoted to first lieutenant in March 1945. The promotion came with new orders. He would assume executive officer duties for Company C. Captain Evans remained the company commander. Leiper would coordinate logistics, ammunition resupply, fuel, and vehicle maintenance, the less glamorous work that kept tank destroyer battalions functioning. The 704th crossed the Rhine River on March 24th. They supported the 4th Armored Division's final push into the German homeland. The combat had changed fundamentally. German resistance was crumbling rapidly. Acute fuel shortages crippled German armor mobility. Ammunition shortages meant fewer Panthers in each engagement. The Wehrmacht was visibly dying. Everyone could see the end approaching. April brought the final engagements. The 704th fought through the Harz Mountains, engaging German tanks near Gotha. The last Panthers, the last desperate defensive stands by units who knew the war was lost but fought anyway because orders demanded it. On May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion had been in continuous combat for 337 days, from July 12, 1944, through May 8, 1945. They destroyed 98 German tanks, Panthers, Tigers, Panzermark IVs. They lost 18 minutes and 18 seconds destroyed in combat, 63 men killed, and 147 wounded. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper survived. He was 27 years old when the war concluded. He had commanded a tank destroyer platoon for 9 grueling months. He had fought at Ericourt, at Bastogne, and during the Rhine crossing. He had witnessed friends die, had written painful letters to their families, and continued fighting because that was his duty. Leiper returned to the United States in August 1945. He was discharged from active duty in September. He went home. He found civilian work. He married. He raised children. He built a quiet, normal life. A life made possible only because men like Sergeant Miller and the loader who lost his legs had paid prices that Leiper would carry with him forever. Sacrifice built the quiet lives of survivors. The M18 Hellcat served with the U.S. Army until 1957. It saw action in Korea. It was exported widely to Allied nations. Yugoslavia utilized M18s well into the 1990s. But the machine's finest hour was Aircourt. September 19, 1944. 4 tank destroyers against a massive Panzer brigade. 15 Panthers obliterated in one foggy morning. That was the day the Hellcat proved every single critic wrong. The Battle of Aircourt is studied today as one of the largest tank battles fought on the Western Front. The 4th Armored Division claimed 281 German tanks destroyed during the entire Lorraine campaign. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion accounted for 39 of those confirmed kills. The M18 Hellcat demonstrated unequivocally that light armor and high speed could defeat heavy armor through the use of superior tactics and relentless crew training. Military historians worldwide study Aircourt at staff colleges. The battle illustrates enduring principles. Terrain is decisive. Weather is decisive. Visibility is decisive. A 17-ton tank destroyer decimated 45-ton Panthers, not because the M18 was inherently superior, but because Lieutenant Leiper's crews masterfully used the dense fog and tricky terrain to neutralize the Germans' overwhelming advantages. The United States Army concluded after the war that specialized tank destroyer battalions were no longer necessary. Future conflicts, they argued, would require main battle tanks to handle anti-tank missions. Specialized tank destroyers were officially deemed obsolete. The aggressive doctrine championed by General Bruce was formally abandoned in 1946. But the men who fought at Aircourt knew the real truth. Specialized vehicles, manned by crews with specialized, aggressive training, could achieve operational results that general-purpose vehicles simply could not. The M18 Hellcat was designed for one primary mission: kill tanks. It accomplished that mission better than any other American armored vehicle in World War II. The kill-to-loss ratio proves it: 10 to 1 at Aircourt, 5 to 1 across the entire European theater. The 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion was deactivated in 1945. The men went home. The M18s were either scrapped or sold to Allied nations. A handful survived. Museums acquired them. Collectors meticulously restored them. Today, you can view operational M18 Hellcats at institutions like the American Armor Foundation and the Museum of American Armor at Fort Benning, Georgia. There is a stone memorial in Aircourt, France, erected by the grateful town to honor the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion. The monument stands close to Hill 246, where Leiper's platoon executed their ambush on September 19th. French citizens maintain the memorial. They remember what those Americans achieved there. They remember the immense price that was paid. Captain Thomas Evans survived the war. He returned to Pennsylvania. He spoke little about his service. He occasionally attended 704th reunions. He passed away in 2004 at the age of 87. His obituary mentioned he commanded Company C at Aircourt, but it failed to mention the 39 Panthers his company destroyed. Sergeant Henry Hartman survived. He returned to New Jersey, working as a machinist for 37 years. He attended every 704th reunion until his death in 1998. He never forgot the 6 Panthers he personally destroyed on September 19th. He never forgot the crewmen who fell beside him. Lieutenant Edwin Leiper's post-war existence is less completely documented. Records confirm he returned to civilian life in 1945. He appears in a photograph of 704th officers taken in March 1945 in Germany. He is third from the left, 27 years old, first lieutenant bars on his collar, standing proudly with the men who entrusted him with their lives. What happened to Leiper after the war is unclear. No public records indicate where he settled or the specific career he pursued. He may have simply desired privacy. Many combat veterans chose that path. They served when duty called. They fought when necessary. They returned home and meticulously built quiet lives far away from the public attention they could have easily claimed. The M18 Hellcat's operational reputation was utterly transformed after Aircourt. The machine that American tankers had ridiculed in July became the vehicle they urgently requested by October. Speed worked. Tactics worked. The doctrine that appeared suicidal in theory proved strategically brilliant in practice. 17 tons could effectively kill 45 tons, provided the crew was superbly trained and the operational conditions were right. The key lesson from Hill 246 remains simple and powerful. Superior equipment does not guarantee victory. The Panther was, arguably, the finest medium tank of World War II. Outstanding armor, exceptional gun, excellent mobility for its size. Yet, 15 Panthers perished on a foggy French hillside because American crews fought smarter, utilized the terrain more effectively, and exploited the unique conditions more ruthlessly. If this true story of David versus Goliath moved you the way it moved us, please do me a quick favor. Hit that like button right now. Every single like tells YouTube's algorithm to show this incredible true story to more people. Hit subscribe and ensure notifications are turned on. We at War After Dark are dedicated to rescuing forgotten stories from the dusty archives every day. Stories about tank destroyer crews who saved lives with sheer speed and tactical brilliance. These are real people, real heroism. Drop a comment immediately and tell us where you are watching from. Are you tuning in from the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, or Australia? Our committed community stretches across the entire world. You are not just a viewer. You are actively helping us keep these crucial memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your own family served in World War II. Just let us know you're here supporting this history. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for making sure Edwin Leiper and the entire 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion never disappear into silence. These incredible men deserve to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen.